child protective services, and they won't give them back to their loving families because they're making money.
This is a legal system that you're going into. And if you don't know the rules, you will be chewed up and spit out.
If I could say anything to a mother who just got their children detained, you're in a crisis. Yeah. Life feels like it's over. The most important thing is regaining custody of your children.
The child welfare system at its core is designed to protect children who need protection, okay? And that's key, is who need protection.
So social workers, out of fear, will remove more children rather than only remove those children that truly need to be removed.
It's okay. It's okay.
This isn't someone stole your car. Someone broke into your house. This is someone took your child, your flesh and blood.
It doesn't say on this order that it was not proven. It says untrue. True. I immediately knew that, okay, well, this ain't over.
Were there signs there? Were there no signs? Did I miss them? Did I catch them? At this point, I honestly don't know.
Families only get a finite amount of time to reunify.
I came into this field to help families, not destroy them.
The difference between the criminal system and the child welfare system is substantial. You have more rights as a criminal than you do as a parent.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fight CPS with LJ. I'm LJ. That's crazy to me where he says you have more rights as a criminal than you have as a parent. Can you guys believe those words? I mean, that is pretty outstanding, and is a little bit absurd, I would say. So I was going to have a guest tonight, but she was having some technical difficulties. So if we can get that fixed, then we'll have her on. Until then, I thought I would go over, I'm in the state of Florida. So I was going to go over some of the tasks in the protective analysis and family change strategy. This is from Florida Safe Families Network. And this is like a list of things that they label like protective capacities, behavioral control impulses, if they take action, sets aside own needs for the child, demonstrate adequate skills, adaptive as a parent, legal guardian, is self-aware, that's in cognitive, is intellectually able, recognizes threats, recognizes child's needs, understands protective role, plans and articulates plans for protection, is resilient, this is an emotional category, meets own emotional needs, is tolerant, is stable, expresses love, empathy, sensitivity to the child, is positively attached with child, and is aligned and supports the child. So I'm going to go over all of these categories and just kind of talk about each one. And, you know, maybe you guys have some ideas or comments on any of this. I welcome them. So let's chat. You can chat with me here below in the comments. And so let's get started. So the first one, the label is protective capacities. Personal and caregiving behavioral, cognitive and emotional characteristics that specifically and directly can be associated with being protective to one's young. Protective capacities are personal qualities or characteristics that contribute to vigilant child protection. So the criteria, according to This is from the Department of Children and Families, Florida Safe Families Network, their website. This is their own material. The criteria for determining caregiver protective capacities. The characteristic prepares the person to be protective. The characteristic enables or empowers the person to be protective. The characteristic is necessary or fundamental to being protective. The characteristic must exist prior to being protective. So the behavioral aspect, the behavioral label, is specific action, activity, or performance that is consistent with and results in protective vigilance. Controls impulses. This refers to a person who is deliberate and careful, who acts in managed and in self-controlled ways. People who do not act on their urges or desires. People that do not overreact as a result of outside stimulation. People who think before they act. People who are planful. Well, boy, CPS is planful. They definitely think before they act. They plan their strategy, and they tend to overreact as a result of outside stimulation, in my opinion. And a lot of the workers will act on their own urges or desires, which is, basically them not being able to control their impulses. So I thought that was interesting. So a person who takes action. This refers to a person who is action-oriented as a human being, not just a caregiver. People who perform when necessary. People who proceed with a course of action. People who take necessary steps. People who are expedient and timely in doing things. People who discharge their duties. So physically able, this refers to people who are sufficiently healthy, mobile, and strong. People who can move quickly when an unsafe situation presents, like active toddlers who may dart out toward the street or water source or pool or canal. What do they do? People who can lift children. People who are physically able to manage a child's behaviors. People with physical abilities to effectively deal with dangers, like a child with special needs who may be prone to running away, or a child who requires close supervision. Assertive and responsive. This refers to being positive and persistent. People who are firm and purposeful. People who are self-confident and self-assured. People who are secure with themselves and their ways. People who are poised and certain of themselves. Adequate energy. I mean, these are things that the Florida Safe Families Network is saying that they want to assess when they're looking at protective capacities, and they are doing the family functioning assessment. I think they do this a couple of times throughout the case. I'm not sure how many times, but I never saw this until like the very, I don't know, probably the very end of my case. And I had no idea about it. And so if you guys can try to get a hold of it, like I said, again, it's the Protective Analysis and Family Change Strategy that I know in Florida that they do. I'm not sure about what state you're in, but you might want to check on it and see what yours says. So adequate energy. This refers to the personal sustenance necessary to be ready and on the job of being protective. People who are alert and focused. People who can move, are on the move, ready to move, will move in a timely way. People who express force and power in their action and activity. People who are not lethargic to the point of incapacitation or inability to be protective. People who are rested or able to overcome being tired. It's interesting they say these things because I'm exhausted. I feel like I am beyond capacity. I feel like I am just tired beyond belief, and but they expect much more of us, don't they? So we have to exhibit all of these behaviors according to this assessment. And they are looking at these things to see if you are exhibiting these behaviors. Uses resources to meet basic needs. This refers to knowing what is needed, getting it, and using it to keeping a child safe. People who get people to help them and their children. People who will use community, public, and private organizations. People who will call on police or access the courts to help them. I'll say that again. People who will call on police or access the courts to help them. I know a lot of us who have done this, and we've been scrutinized for, calling the police or not heard in court, and it being completely flipped around and used against us for, getting the courts involved. Scaling guide. Let's see. So it says, no, I'm gonna pass that one. So this one says, sets aside own needs for child. This refers to people who can delay gratifying their own needs, who accept their children's needs as a priority over their own. People who do for themselves after they have done for their children. People who sacrifice for their children. People who can wait to be satisfied. It's kind of hard when you want your kid back. It's hard to just wait to be satisfied, right? People who seek ways to satisfy their children's needs as the priority. They are number one. Our children are number one. Their priorities are number one, right? This refers to people who adjust and make the best of whatever caregiving situation occurs. People who are flexible and can adapt. Oops, sorry, I lost my spot. People who accept things and can move with them. Well, it's kind of hard to accept the loss of your child in your life. I mean, they give you 100%, custody, and then they rip it away and give you an hour a week, and call that reunification, and you're supposed to just adapt according to them. People who accept things and can move with them, I read that. People who are creative about caregiving. People who come up with solutions and ways of behaving that may be new, needed, and unfamiliar, but more fitting. Demonstrates adequate skills. This refers to the possession and use of skills that are related to being protective. So this is people who can feed, care for, supervise their children according to their basic needs. People who can handle, manage, oversee as related to protectiveness. People who can cook, clean, maintain, guide, shelter as related to protectiveness. Adaptive as a parent or a legal guardian. This refers to people who adjust and make the best of whatever caregiving situation occurs. People who are flexible and can adapt. People who accept things and can move with them. People who are creative about caregiving. People who come up with solutions and ways of behaving that may be new, needed, and unfamiliar, but more fitting. So then there goes cognitive. So cognitive is specific intellect, knowledge or understanding, and perception that results in protective vigilance. Is self-aware. This refers to sensitivity to one's thinking and actions and their effects on others, on a child, People who understand the cause, effect, relationship between their own actions and results for their children. People who are open to who they are, to what they do, and to the effects of what they do. People who think about themselves and judge the quality of their thoughts, emotions, and behavior. People who see that the part of them that is a caregiver is unique and requires different things from them. They have a scaling criteria from A, B, C, and D. So one that is self-aware is a parent or caregiver that understands the cause-effect relationship between their own actions and effects on the child. They are open to who they are and to what they do and the effects of what they do. They are able to think about themselves and judge the quality of their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. They are able to view their role as a caregiver as being unique. So that's the ideal one, is if you're self-aware, that's what they want to see. There's also another one that says the parent/caregiver is able to understand the cause-effect relationship between their own actions and effects on children. However, times they struggle to be open in regards to themselves and the quality of their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in relation to providing for care of the child. The parent/caregiver struggles or do not result in child being maltreated and or being in dangerous situation. C, parent/caregiver is able to understand the cause-effect relationship between their own actions, however, are not able to relate their actions to the effects on their child. Parent/caregiver is not open and reflecting their own thoughts, emotions, and or behavior in relation to providing the care of their children, resulting in children being maltreated and or in danger. Parent/caregiver recognizes the need for understanding the causal relationship and the effects on the child. And D, parent/caregiver is not able to understand the cause-effect relationship between their own actions and are not able to relate those actions to the effects on their child. Parent/caregiver is not open in regard to their own thoughts, emotions, and or behavior, resulting in child being maltreated and or in danger. Parent/caregiver does not recognize the need for understanding the causal relationship of their actions and the effects on child. I think this is interesting because this is quite the behavioral assessment, if you will. And this is coming from, workers that don't have a degree in behavioral science. What kind of qualities or background do they have to be able to assess this? A lot of these workers do not have, I'm sorry, a little bit of background. They don't have the credentials to be able to assess like this. So I find that really mind-blowing. The next one, so is intellectually able, adequate knowledge to fulfill caregiving duties. This refers to information and personal knowledge that is specific to caregiving that is associated with protection. People who know enough about child development to keep kids safe. People who have information related to what is needed to keep a child safe. People who know how to provide basic care, which assures that children are safe. Here's the scaling criteria. So A is a parent/caregiver possess essential knowledge regarding caregiving and child development. Parent/caregiver seeks to increase their knowledge in correlation with child's needs and is able to recognize the need for increased knowledge as being essential to provide the needs for the child and the child's safety. Parent/caregiver may have cognitive limitations, however, has supports and or resources to assist in knowledge development. So do you have supports? Do you have resources? Do you have counseling? Are you in therapy? Do you go to a church? Do you have a good support group? They want to see these things. So that's good, for you to, make that be known if you have positive, healthy support. B is a parent/caregiver possesses essential knowledge regarding caregiving and child development, However, at times struggles in recognizing the correlation with child's needs and the need for increased/varied knowledge for providing for child safety. Parent/caregiver is open to seeking assistance and may or may not have a support network to assist in increasing their knowledge regarding child development. Maltreatment has not occurred as a result of the parent/caregiver's knowledge capacity. So that's one if, they think that you're open and willing to get support if you don't have it, but you haven't necessarily shown maltreatment toward the child based upon your lack of support. C is parent/caregiver lacks essential knowledge regarding caregiving and child development and does not correlate the lack of knowledge to the responsibility for child safety and development. Parent/caregiver may have a cognitive delay that affects their ability to increase their knowledge regarding caregiving and safety, and the lack of resources or supports for their cognitive delay is a contributing factor to the parent/caregiver intellectual capacity. Parent/caregiver is not or will not seek assistance in increasing their knowledge. Maltreatment has occurred as a result of the parent/caregiver's knowledge capacity. So that's if, you don't agree that you have any knowledge about responsibility for the child's safety and development. If you have a cognitive delay, well, how would they know that unless they're performing a behavioral assessment, which last I checked, you have to have a college degree to do so. Several of them, I think. D, parent/caregiver lacks essential and basic child development knowledge in regards to caregiving needs and child safety. Parent/caregiver may have a cognitive delay that is debilitating and is not being addressed through informal or formal support. The parent/caregiver knowledge is such that it leaves children in danger and has resulted in maltreatment. Parent/caregiver is not or will not seek assistance in increasing this knowledge or accessing supports to develop knowledge regarding child development and child safety. That's just, wow. I mean, I want to know who's doing this report. I want to know what my workers' credentials are. If they are able to assess me like this, then I want to know what their college credits are. What courses did they take to be able to give me this assessment and to deem me, any of these really, even if it's the good one, letter A. The next one is recognizes child's needs. Accurate perceptions of the child. This refers to seeing and understanding a child's capabilities, temperament, needs, and limitations correctly. People who know what children of a certain age or with particular characteristics are capable of. People who respect uniqueness in others. People who see a child essentially as the child is and as others see the child. People who recognize the child's needs, strengths, and limitations. People who can explain what a child requires, generally for protection, and why. People who see and value the capabilities of a child and are sensitive to difficulties a child experiences. People who appreciate uniqueness and difference. People who are accepting and understanding. The scaling criteria is A, parent/caregiver consistently recognizes the child's needs, strengths, and limitations. Parent/caregiver is able to appreciate the uniqueness and differences in children with acceptance and understanding. Parent/caregiver are sensitive to the child and their experiences. So that's that's the one that you definitely want them to say about you, but you can't get them to say anything you want. B, parent/caregiver recognizes the child's needs, strengths, and limitations. Parent caregiver is able to appreciate the uniqueness and differences in children. However, at times struggles in understanding and accepting the child's differences and uniqueness. At times, the parent caregiver struggles with identifying with the child and their experiences. Parent/caregiver is aware during these times and may have sought assistance in continuing to develop their parenting skills in regards to recognizing child's needs and differences. The parent/caregiver has supports and or resources available for assistance. Children have not been maltreated and or unsafe due to the parent caregiver capacity of being able to recognize child's needs and strengths. Well, how will they know this if, unless they are with you day in, day out? They're doing this assessment, to my knowledge, already after they've taken your kids. So how can they even make this assumption or do this assessment when they haven't seen you day in, day out with your kid, So that's just crazy. Excuse me. So C, parent/caregiver does not identify with the child's needs/strengths and or limitations, resulting in the parent caregiver acting in ways that have resulted in the child being maltreated and or unsafe. The parent or caregiver is able to recognize their inability to identify with children and is open to assistance in increasing their parenting capacity. D, parent or caregiver does not identify with the child's needs, strengths, and or limitations that have resulted in the child being maltreated or unsafe. The parent or caregiver does not see value in capabilities of the child and are not sensitive to the child and their experiences. Parent or caregiver views of the child is incongruent to the child and how others view the child. Parent or caregiver is not able to recognize their inability to identify with child and the child's needs and are not willing or able to seek assistance in increasing their parenting capacity. The next one is understands protective role. This refers to awareness. This refers to knowing there are certain solely owned responsibilities and obligations that are specific to protecting a child. People who possess an internal sense of appreciation for their own protective role. People who can explain what the protective role means and involves and why it is so important. People who recognize the accountability and stakes associated with the role. People who value and believe it is his or her primary responsibility to protect the child. Scaling criteria. Parent or caregiver values and believes that this is their primary responsibility to protect the child. Parent or caregiver is convicted in their beliefs and possess an internal sense and appreciation for their protective role. Parent or caregiver is unwavering in their protective role and are able to articulate the significance of their role. How many of you feel like you have already done all of that and still you don't have your kids? So even when we do all of that, say if we got all of the great remarks on this assessment, well, then what? I still don't have my kid back at the end of the day. A lot of you are saying, and so what good was the assessment? B, parent or caregiver believes that protecting their child is a primary responsibility, however, at times struggle with their internal sense and appreciation for their protective role, resulting in times where the caregiver or parent has abdicated their role for protectiveness to others without regard for the protectiveness of the alternate caregiver. Parent or caregiver recognizes their limitations in regards to protectiveness, and their actions have not resulted in maltreatment and or an unsafe child. Parent or caregiver does not value and or believes that their primary responsibility is to protect the child. Parent or caregiver may have an internal sense for being protective, however, does not or cannot internalize the primary responsibility for protection of the child. Parent or caregiver does not or cannot accept responsibility for child protection resulting in children being maltreated and or unsafe. D, parent or caregiver does not recognize and or value the responsibility to protect children as a primary role of a caregiver. Parent or caregiver does not have an internal sense for being protective and takes no responsibility for keeping children safe, resulting in children being maltreated and or unsafe. I hope you guys are taking notes because this is really good stuff that you can use, to word and articulate and form your responses to your worker when you're talking to them, and identify and recognize your role as the parent or caregiver. Plans and articulates plans for protection. This refers to the thinking ability that is evidenced in a reasonable, well thought out plan. People who are realistic in their idea and arrangements about what is needed to protect a child. People whose thinking and estimates of what dangers exist and what arrangement or actions are necessary to safeguard a child. People who are aware and show a conscious, focused process for thinking that results in that are necessary to safeguard the child. People who are aware and show a conscious, focused process for thinking that results in an acceptable plan. People whose awareness of that plan is best illustrated by their ability to explain it and reason out why it is sufficient. So scaling criteria for that one is A, parent or caregiver has developed either currently or in the past plans to protect children. Parent or caregiver is realistic in their planning and arrangement about what is needed to ensure child safety. Parent or caregiver is aware of danger and is focused on their processing and development of a plan for safety. B, parent or caregiver is realistic in their plan for child safety and is able to make arrangements to ensure child safety, however, may or may not have developed a plan for protection in the past. Parent or caregiver is able to articulate a plan and has the resources to execute the plan if needed. So they want to know you have a plan. Should it come down to it, what is your plan? What can you do? What can you say to show and to tell them, that you are aware of a plan for child safety and how to keep your child safe with you? C, parent/caregiver does not recognize the plan or the need to plan for child safety and has not developed a plan in the past or has developed plans that were unrealistic to ensure safety, thus resulting in maltreatment or children being unsafe. Parent or caregiver may have cognitive limitations that affect their ability to conceptualize a plan for protection and are open to assistance in developing plans and or accessing resources. This is heavy stuff in this assessment. This is really diving in deep to an understanding of the person you are as a parent and as an individual. So this is a pretty heavy assessment. So I really hope you guys are catching all of this. It's pretty good stuff. So D, parent or caregiver does not recognize the need to develop a plan to ensure child safety and has not developed a plan in the past or has developed plans that were unrealistic, resulting in children being maltreated and or unsafe. Parent or caregiver does correlate the inaction of developing a plan and children being maltreated and or unsafe. Parent or caretaker may have cognitive limitations that affect their ability to conceptualize a plan for protection. Parent or caregiver is unwilling or unable to seek assistance in developing plans and or accessing resources to assure child safety. Parent or caregiver is unrealistic and unaware of the necessity as parents or caregivers to develop and execute plans for protection of children. That is not what you want them to say about you. But how do you really have any say in this assessment? So definitely ask your worker for this report, because it's got to be in there somewhere. No matter what state you're in, it's going to be an assessment that's included in your report. Get your whole file. The next one is emotional category. So emotional is specific feelings, attitudes, identification with a child, and motivation that results in protective vigilance. So meets own emotional needs. This refers to the parent or caregiver satisfying their feelings in reasonable, appropriate ways that are not dependent on or take advantage of others, or in particular, children. People who use personal and social means for feeling well and happy that are acceptable, sensible, and practical. People who employ mature, responsible ways of identifying, satisfying ways of their feelings and emotional needs. People who understand and accept that their feelings and gratification of those feelings are separate from their child. Scaling criteria. A, parent or caregiver recognizes and understands their own emotional needs and is effectively managed their needs and ways they do not interfere with their ability to parent and does not take the advantage of others. Parent or caregiver makes choices in regards to satisfying their feelings and emotional needs that are mature, acceptable, reasonable, and practical. B, parent or caregiver recognizes their own emotional needs, however, struggles to manage their needs in ways that do not interfere with their ability to parent and or take advantage of others. Parent or caregiver makes choices in regards to satisfying their emotional needs that at times are not mature and or acceptable and or sensible or practical. Parent or caregiver choices do not result in maltreatment or unsafe for the child. Parent or caregiver has and uses resources necessary to ensure children are safe while ensuring their emotional needs are met. It's giving us the answer right there. That's what they want. Parent or caregiver makes choices in regards to satisfying their feelings and emotional needs that are mature, acceptable, sensible, and practical. These are the words they want us to use. Excuse me. C, parent or caregiver shows limited understanding and recognition of their own emotional needs. Parent or caregiver often seeks to satisfy their own emotional needs through means that take advantage of others, primarily their children. Parent or caregiver uses avenues to satisfy their own emotional needs that are unacceptable, resulting in children being maltreated and or unsafe. D, parent or caregiver does not recognize their own emotional needs, resulting in their needs being unmanaged and interfering with their ability to parent the children. Parent or caregiver has unmanaged needs that results in children being maltreated and or unsafe. So right there, it tells us, they tell us what they consider us meeting our emotional needs are in the first scaling criteria in letter A. Letter A on all of these is basically what the best outcome for what they're assessing would be. So is resilient. This refers to responsiveness and being able and ready to act promptly. People who recover quickly from setbacks or being upset. People who spring into action. People who can withstand challenges and stress. People who are effective at coping as a caregiver. Boy, they make it tough, don't they? They make it really tough to, recover quickly from a setback, such as, not having your child. It's pretty hard. So the scaling criteria, A, is parent or caregiver has demonstrated that they are able to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune and or change. Recovery and adjustment are focused on maintaining their role as a caregiver and providing for protection for their children. Parent or caregiver recognizes the need for resiliency as a caregiver and is effective at taking action and coping as a caregiver. B, parent or caregiver has demonstrated they are able to recover from or adjust under most situations in regard to misfortune and or change. Recovery and adjustment are mostly focused on their role as a caregiver and for providing protection. Parent or caregiver struggles with coping and taking action during these times. Children are not maltreated and or unsafe due to the parents coping and or taking action. Parent or caregiver, when faced with adversity, challenges, is not able to recover or adjust. Recovery and adjustment requires frequent interventions by support and resources. Parent or caregiver cannot focus their role during these times to caretaking, resulting in children being maltreated and or unsafe. Parent or caregiver does not respond to adversity or challenges, and recovery or adjustment is not existent. Parent or caregiver does not respond to interventions by supports and resources, and children are maltreated or unsafe due to the parent or caregiver's responses. So listen to that. Due to the parent or caregiver's responses, they want the response on all the letter A's that I'm sharing with you guys. So again, this is Florida Safe Families Network. This is their assessment on protective analysis and family change strategy. So the next one is tolerant. This refers to caregiver who is able to endure trying circumstances with even temper, be understanding and sympathetic of experiences, express forgiveness under provocation, broad-minded, and patient as a caregiver. People who can let things pass. People who have a big picture attitude, who don't overreact to mistakes and accidents. People who value how others feel and what they think. Scaling criteria, letter A. Parent and caregiver maintains an even temper and patience under trying circumstances. Parent or caregiver recognizes the need for tolerance as a caregiver and works to ensure that they are open-minded and understanding as a caregiver. B, parent or caregiver frequently maintains an even temper and displays patience under most situations. Parent or caregiver at times struggle with temper and patience, however, does not impact their role as a caregiver or result in maltreatment and or unsafe children. Parent or caregiver is aware that their challenges with tolerance and has the ability to access resources to assist in increasing their tolerance. So again, they really drive home the ability to access resources. So they want you to look for resources that can help you under, hard times and to be able to have that support. let's see, where was I? C, parent or caregiver frequently cannot or will not maintain their temper and or patience while providing care for children. Parents or caregiver are aware of their decreased tolerance, however, are not able to correlate the need for tolerance in parenting. Parent or caregiver lacks, parent or caregiver's lack of tolerance has resulted in children being maltreated and or being unsafe. Parent or caregiver is willing to access resources and or supports to increase their tolerance as a caregiver. Or D, parent or caregiver cannot or will not maintain their temper and or patience while providing care for children. Parent or caregiver is not aware of their decreased tolerance and are not able to correlate the needs for tolerance in parenting. Parenting caregiver lack of tolerance has resulted in children being maltreated and or being unsafe. Parent or caregiver cannot or will not access resources and or supports to increase their tolerance as a caregiver. So again, they want you to identify that you can seek help if you are having difficulties. That's the response they want from you. Next one is stable. This refers to the mental health, emotional energy, and emotional stability of the parent or caregiver in providing for protection of children. People who are doing well enough emotionally that their needs and feelings don't immobilize them or reduce their ability to act promptly and appropriately. People who are not consumed with their own feelings and anxieties. People who are mentally alert and in touch with reality. People who are motivated as a caregiver and with respect to protectiveness. Scaling criteria, letter A. Parent or caregiver's mental, emotional stability and energy are sufficient to meet the needs of the child. Feelings and emotions are not paralyzing to the parent or caregiver. Parents or caregivers are alert and ready or reality oriented to their own emotions and feelings and actions. Parent or caregiver is motivated in ensuring their own mental, emotional stability and energy are sufficient to ensure that the child is safe. Parent B, parent or caregiver's mental, emotional stability and energy are sufficient under most daily routines. However, during times of adversity or challenges, the parent or caregiver struggle to maintain their stability. Parent and caregiver or caregiver seeks resources and supports during these times and accesses resources to ensure the child is safe. So again, they access the resources that they have available to them. That's really big in all of this. It looks like they really repeat a lot, is access to resources and actually utilizing your access to all of these resources. B, parent or caregiver's mental, emotional stability and energy are sufficient under most daily routines. However, during times of adversity or challenges, the parent or caregiver struggle to maintain their stability. Parent and caregiver seeks resources and supports during these times and access resources to ensure that the child is safe. C, parent or caregiver is frequently not able to maintain emotional stability during daily routines, resulting in the child's needs not being met. Parent or caregiver is aware of instability, however, is immobilized in taking action to access resources or supports to provide for child safety, resulting in child being maltreated or unsafe. D, parent or caregiver is not able to maintain emotional stability during daily routines and challenging life events. Parent or caretaker is not aware of their instability and has taken no action to access resources and or supports to ensure for child safety, resulting in child being maltreated and or unsafe. The next one is expresses love, empathy, and sensitivity to the child. This refers to active affection, compassion, warmth, and sympathy. People who fully relate to, who can explain and feel what a child feels, thinks, and goes through. People who relate to a child with expressed positive regard and feeling and physical, with expressed positive regard and feeling and physical touching. People who are understanding of children and their life situation. The scaling criteria for that: A, parent or caregiver is able to relate of their child and demonstrate actions that are reflective of expressing love, affection, compassion, warmth, and sympathy for the child and their experiences. Parent or caregiver is able to explain child's feelings and emotions and is able to respond accordingly. B, parent or caregiver is able to relate to the child, however, at times struggles to demonstrate either physically or verbally loving, having affection, compassion, warmth, and sympathy. While the parent or caretaker acknowledges their love, compassion, warmth, and sympathy, they struggle with displaying the affection to the child. This does not result in child being maltreated and or unsafe. Parent or caregiver frequently cannot or will not relate to their child's feelings. Parent or caregiver do not express love, empathy, and or sympathy for the child on a frequent or consistent basis. Parent or caregiver is able to recognize the absence of relating to the child's feelings. The parent or caregiver's feelings towards the child result in the child being maltreated and or unsafe. D, the parent or caregiver is not able to relate to the child's feelings. They do not express any love, empathy, and or sympathy for the child. The parent or caregiver's lack of feelings toward the child results in the child being maltreated or unsafe. Next category is positively attached with the child. This refers to a strong attachment that places a child's interest above all else. People who act on behalf of a child because of the closeness and identity the person feels for the child. People who order their lives according to what is best for their children because of the special connection and attachment that exists between them. People whose closeness with a child exceeds other relationships. People who are properly attached to the child. A, scaling criteria. Parent or caregiver demonstrates their attachment to the child through actions such as ordering their lives according to what is best for their child. Displays affectionate regard for their child and the child's experiences, and identifies their closeness with the child exceeds other personal relationships. B, parent or caregiver demonstrates their attachment to the child through actions, however, at times struggles with ordering their lives according to what is best for the child. Parent or caregiver attachment with the child. The struggles are not intentional, and parent or caregiver is aware of the struggle. They have the ability to seek resources and supports for increasing their parenting capacity, and children have not been maltreated or unsafe due to the parental and child attachment. C, parent or caregiver frequently does not demonstrate their attachment to the child. That is evidenced by the ordering of their lives, lack of affection, regard for the child, and the parent identifying other relationships as being their primary relationship. Child has suffered maltreatment and or is unsafe as a result of the parent or caregiver's lack of attachment to the child. D, parent or caregiver has no attachment to the child, shows no regard for the child and the parent or caregiver relationship. They do not identify themselves as a parent or caregiver. They cannot or will not seek resources and or supports to enhance their attachment and does not recognize the correlation between the lack of attachment and maltreatment. and I'll just read one of the last ones. Is aligned and supports the child. Supports, this refers to actual, observable, sustaining, encouraging, and maintaining a child's psychological, physical, and social well-being. People who spend considerable time with the child filled with positive regard. People who take action to assure the children are encouraged and reassured. People who take an obvious stand on behalf of a child. This refers to a mental state or an identity with a child when they're aligned. People who strongly think of themselves as closely related to or associated with a child. People who think that they are highly connected to a child and therefore responsible for a child's well-being and safety. People who consider their relationship with the child as the highest priority. Displays concern for the child. This refers to a sensitivity to understand and feel some sense of responsibility for a child and what the child is going through in such a manner to compel one to comfort and reassure. People who show compassion through sheltering and soothing a child. People who calm, pacify, and appease a child. And people who physically take action or provide physical responses that reassure a child, that generate security. So I'm out of time. Thank you guys for listening to that. It's, again, like I said, that's for the state of Florida. That's an assessment that the Department of Children and Families do for protective capacities and family strategy of change assessment. So look in your records, see if you see any kind of assessment like this, and make sure you have support is the biggest thing. And I hope you guys are all hanging in there. I was gonna play something positive, but looks like we can't due to copyright issues. So I just want to say, listen to Bob Marley, Get Up, Stand Up. It's a great song, and I hope you guys are hanging in there. Keep your chins up and keep fighting the good fight. Your kids love you and they miss you and they want to come home. So keep fighting, you guys. Have a great night. Thanks. Fight CPS with LJ. See you next Tuesday at 10.